to our second desktop time. Our last desktop time was very exciting and rewarding. We had a great audience. We had a great group of guest hosts, as we do today. So we just want to welcome you here today. We hope you're going to hear something today you didn't know already and learn about better use of your desktop QuickBooks. Today we're very privileged to have, again, two special guest hosts. We first of all have Will English, who's a nationally known QuickBooks expert, certified Intuit solution provider, advanced certified pro advisor consultant, and president of English Management Solutions. And he's going to be demonstrating the QuickBooks point of sale powered by Revel. And we also have David Glantz, who's a QuickBooks premier reseller with over 25 years of experience in the financial and technology software world, and president of Business Sense, and he'll be demonstrating Lightspeed point of sale and its ability to sync data to a QuickBooks desktop file. So welcome to both you gentlemen. Again, we talked about our order here, and I did want to just give a quick introduction once again, and we thank you for joining us today here at Desktop Time. This is going to be a monthly webinar, and again, the intent is really to provide a resource for folks that want to stay on their desktop for whatever reason. They continue to want to use desktop applications like QuickBooks Desktop. And we're basically just trying to create a forum where you can come here and it's a safe place. People aren't going to tell you you're a fool for not being in the cloud already completely. This event is sponsored by QBox, which most of you are familiar with QBox. It's an application that provides cloud-enabled file sharing between two desktop users. But again, this forum is really designed for organizations to come in and represent their products to integrate with desktop. Today we're specifically obviously talking about point of sale systems. In January we talked about Avalara, and in future meetings we're going to have other vendors that again provide resources to integrate with desktop. So with that being said, we also are going to throw some questions at you throughout the webinar today, and for the first time we're actually going to have a raffle at the end as well. So my producer, who I'm going to embarrass but not put her on camera because she'd be mad at me, Allison Garcia, also from CoralTree/QBox, is here with us today. She's running everything behind the scenes for us, so thank you to Allison. You'll also notice that you do have the chat feature on your windows, so as any of the speakers are talking, if you want to pop a question to us, we'll try to get those to the different presenters as they go along. But otherwise, again, we just would ask that you sit back, enjoy the presentations today. And with that, I'm going to first turn over the floor to David Glantz, who's going to introduce us to Lightspeed. And he's actually going to pull up his screen and share that with you, and again, show you some integration capabilities related to Lightspeed and desktops. So with that, David, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you.
Great. Thank you. So I'm not sure what to do with my video screen. I'll put it over here. So I'm assuming you all can see the Lightspeed retail screen.
Yes, we can.
Great. So what I thought to do was to provide an overview of Lightspeed and show you the mapping between Lightspeed and QuickBooks Desktop, and then go into the desktop and actually show you some of the transactions. And so just for background, so Lightspeed, you might have heard of Lightspeed. It's been around for quite a while. It was and probably still is, the premier Mac-based point-of-sale solution. And just like QuickBooks Point-of-Sale Desktop is a Windows local area network point-of-sale solution, Lightspeed On-Site, which is what they call it now, is same sort of thing. It runs in a Mac, runs in a local area network. About 6 years ago, and I could have that time frame wrong, but around 6 years ago, they acquired a company called Merchant OS. And Merchant OS is a web-based point-of-sale system. And they incorporated that into their own. So Merchant OS doesn't exist anymore. It's now Lightspeed Retail. And so this is what you see here. And what's interesting about Lightspeed Retail is that it's somewhat platform agnostic. So you can run it on a Mac, you can run it on a PC, you can run it on an iPad. And so through the Mac and the PC, it's browser-based, and on the iPad, there's an iPad app. And so I mentioned that because I'm going to go through the browser-based. I'm not going to have this be a demo of Lightspeed itself, because I'd rather spend most of the time on the mapping. But with Lightspeed, so let me tell you background on what you're going to see. So this is a demo account. I'm also going to show you a client's account. But this is a demo account that has two different shops. Lightspeed calls them shops. So here's, and the importance of that is you'll see in a second in relation to how it maps over to QuickBooks. So with Lightspeed, you have your typical sales. So you have, and I'm not going to even go into sales screens and go through all of that, but you have your sales where you're selling product, you could be selling service, you have discounts, you have sales tax, you have different payment methods, you have gift cards, all that typical sort of thing. You can also have, and I'm going to talk about what's specific about QuickBooks Point of Sale Desktop, or at least the mapping. I want to get into features and functions except those that impact how the information gets sent over to QuickBooks. So you also have special orders in the QuickBooks Point of Sale Desktop world. That's like sales orders. So you can special order something, you can put a deposit on it that has a financial impact. You can also, there's work orders, so you can do work orders like service orders, whether it's services or also purchasing product, and there's a workflow for that. That impacts the financial side. Of course, there's refunds as well that impacts financials. And you have things like payouts, end of day, all of that hits the QuickBooks. About a year ago, Lightspeed purchased an e-commerce company, so they're also implementing e-commerce integrated directly with Lightspeed. So that could also flow through to the financials. On the inventory side, it's not like QuickBooks Point of Sale Desktop where you assign a GL account or GL accounts at the item level. You do that in the mapping area. And what you have also on here that impacts financials, you have purchase orders. So it will send over, and you'll see this in the mapping, but it'll send over bills or receiving documents that are created from a PO, as well as vendor returns can be sent over to QuickBooks. And then something to keep in mind is this concept of category. In the QuickBooks Point of Sale Desktop world, and I keep referencing that just because maybe many of you are familiar with it, but there's a concept of department. Well, in Lightspeed, there's these things called categories. And what's important about them is that's what you are mapping when you are determining what GL accounts, especially on the income side, what GL accounts are hitting QuickBooks Desktop. And again, we'll get into that in a sec. And then you can also, on the customer side, customers can have credit. That credit will then also get sent over to QuickBooks. So that's the gist of what I want to get into with Lightspeed. But just keep in mind, this is an online system, so it's web-based. The iPad is web-based, so everything's in the cloud. And what Lightspeed does is they work with a third-party tool called Shogo, and then Lightspeed white labels it, and it's called Lightspeed Accounting. I still think of it as Shogo. But on the Shogo site, what's interesting about it is they work with 11 different POS systems. And they also, any of these systems can then be integrated with QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online, or Xero. So it acts like a kind of a portal. But let me go on this screen. So in Shogo, when you log into, Lightspeed Accounting, it brings up this screen, which is a summary of your sales. Again, this is a demo data. Again, I'll show you to a client's account in a minute. But so it shows you a summary of sales. It shows you down here our activity for our 2 different stores, and we can click on each of those and drill in. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, they do forecasting. So if you want to set up forecasting in Lightspeed Accounting, you can then run reports that show activity compared to goals, like you would see that here. I don't have any of that set up, but there is that capability. And then you can run a bunch of different reports because it pulls the data from Lightspeed or whatever accounting system into the cloud on a daily basis and then populates it here, and then this becomes a database repository for all of your sales activity. So what I also want to show, what's interesting is it will also send, you can have it send you an email or whomever. In this case, it's to the client and to me. It's sending a summary of the activity for each of the different stores. This is a different client, but they have however many stores that is. And you can see an interesting summary of activity by store. Okay, I'm just going to maneuver around that. Okay, so now I'm going to go into a client's file. And so this is a live file with client activity. They just have the one store, so you only see the one entry here. And you can, from here, let me go show you. I'm doing actually a screenshot of one of them. I couldn't figure out how to get rid of their name on here or hide their name, so I went to a screenshot just for this one slide. But when you click on settings, the company settings are here. It uses the web connector, and if you click on this, there's a whole, actually a pretty nicely laid out help on how to set up the web connector specifically for this integration. And then there's a whole bunch of different settings, and I want to go into the settings, which I think are more important. So now I snuck over here. Now we're back to live. So what you have is you have the ability to set up different levels of posting. So in this case, you can have journal entries. You can do summary, which is from a QuickBooks point of sale desktop perspective, that's your typical, where you do summary activity, one sales receipt for the day, or you can do itemized sales receipts. You can also set up the class. So again, if you're talking about shops, different locations, different stores, you can set up a class. This is specifically for this particular store that I'm setting this up. So like in my demo where I had BC demo and the second store, you would go through this iteration for each store, this one-time sort of setup. So you can define a customer that gets a sales receipt. You can define the cash account. You can have it track sales in QuickBooks if you want, using that sales tax item that shows up at the bottom of the sales receipt. I think that could be a little problematic because I think there's a potential for it to be off. So I typically have turned it off for clients. You do have a sales tax item for each sales tax rate or category that you have in Lightspeed. So there's ways to do that without having to use that sales tax item at the bottom of the sales receipt. You can tell it whether you want to book inventory and COGS or not. And then when you're syncing bills, then you can you can turn it off completely, or you can do it as a PO or a bill. We recommend doing it as a bill. And you can also have the option to do vendor returns. And then there's a couple other options, which I won't get into at this point. Then each of these sections, I'm going to briefly go through some of them in a little more detail than others. Here's the sales tab. You can see here's all of the different categories. So in my demo Lightspeed account, you saw there was, I don't know, maybe a dozen different categories. Well, here in this live file, there's a couple dozen different ones. So for each category, you define the QuickBooks item that will get posted on the sales receipt. You also tell it what class. Again, in this case, there's only one class. There actually aren't any classes because they're not using classes in this particular client. What's powerful about having this QuickBooks item is that, let's say you have services, and this client doesn't have any services. So you could have a different income account for posting the service income, or maybe there's different categories of income or income accounts on your P&L that you want to segregate. So you can define those here. And of course, they're items, so you can change the GL account at any time in QuickBooks. You also set up your discounts. So you have here this is all the different discounts that had activity in Lightspeed. And so you can set those up to different accounts. This is probably a contra income account. Then you can also set up for damaged goods. You can have them automatically post to a damaged goods account as compared to some generic inventory adjustment account. Here's where you could have your different sales tax. So you could have sales tax, like an example where we had my client that had 6 different ones. They have sales tax San Francisco, sales tax Palo Alto, sales tax Corte Madera, et cetera, for each one. And then on the payments, I find this one interesting in that here's all of the different credit card activities or credit card payment methods. And what it allows you to do is to set up, see all these with the credit at the end? all of the ones with credit at the end and say none will all roll into this one credit card payment transaction. So basically, sorry, I have to ignore my phone that's ringing next to me. So what it allows you to do is, since typically Visa, MasterCard, nowadays Amex, they all get rolled into a single deposit, then you can have all of those summarized into a single one on your sales receipt. And then you have your different payment methods. You have gift cards. This gift card here is one. It was a QuickBooks point of sale account that had gift cards, so we needed a mechanism for them to utilize the gift cards that are still sitting over in QuickBooks. Donations. You can set up a donation payment method so that the donation gets posted to the to a donation account on the P&L. Anyway, keep going. Here's where you do your over short and your payouts. Inventory is similar to the way you're doing with on the sales side, except you're assigning GL accounts as compared to items. But what this does is you're going to create a journal, or it's going to create a journal that will adjust your COGS based on daily sales activity. It also uses this when it creates the bill that's sent over to QuickBooks. And then you have purchase orders, so you have specific purchase order activity. Specifically, you have freight, in this case, freight and discounts. There could be other fees, that sort of thing, that appear on the PO. And then if we wanted to, we could actually do a preview. This is previewing last night's activity. And so it's showing what is going to get posted to QuickBooks if I had it turned on today. So here's the sales receipt. Here's the journal that's going to post inventory and COGS. And we're actually going to see these in QuickBooks in a second. But that's the mapping. And one other thing that's interesting about this, if I go back over to here. So if I go to, I think, is it here? No, it is here. So one interesting thing is this is back in the demo account. In the demo account, we had these two different shops. Well, they both happen to be Lightspeed Retail, but this one might be Lavu, or it could be a Breadcrumb, or it could be a different POS system. And you can have it still come over to, this is QuickBooks, which means desktop. You could have those come over to the same QuickBooks desktop account. You could have them go over to different, or any combination of the above. So that was kind of interesting and kind of a powerful capability. Okay, let's go into QuickBooks. So in QuickBooks, these are, I should mention, these are back in February. I turned off the integration back in February. This is a slight plug for QBox, where in our environment, we do the bookkeeping for this company, and we have a server, and a hosted server. And our hosted server is just going nuts with the web connector, and the web connector keeps bombing out, and we have to anyway, it's a long story short. If we had QBox, we wouldn't have to worry about this sort of thing on our server. But anyhow, but these are the transactions that were sent over from Lightspeed Accounting. And you can see, if we just look at a sales receipt, here's your typical sales receipt. But it shows you one entry per category / department. And basically, each of the things that you saw in the mapping, there'll be one line for each of those where there was activity. So we got some income, we got some discounts, we got some sales tax, and here's where it lumped together the credit cards, and then it looks like there was also a gift card. Again, this is a live account. This is actual data that gets sent across. We can look at a journal. So this is the cost of goods sold and inventory journal. So you can see it sends over one transaction, or one set of transactions per, or I should say one set of lines per category or department. And then you can see down here, there's some bills. So here's the bills that were sent, and it's showing one line again. And it is also, here's the freight in, and it gives you a little summary of the bill that came over. So this was invoice number that was entered into Lightspeed as a receiving document. and it sends over credits. So same sort of thing. Here's a vendor credit that is a return. Okay, so in summary, I kind of zipped through that, but I want to make sure I got all of that in time. But in summary, it is using this Lightspeed accounting module to map all of your accounts. It's using items in QuickBooks, so you have the flexibility of the QuickBooks items if you ever decide to make changes. And in some cases, what we've done in this mapping is we kind of went a little haywire, and inside of here where you do your sales, this is the demo account, so it doesn't have much data, but for each of those different categories, we actually set up different items for every category. Now that could be overkill, but it allowed us the opportunity then to tweak it on the QuickBooks desktop side. So I think that's the end of my canned sort of presentation, and I don't know if any questions came through in chat. I would be happy to continue that conversation. So I don't know, Chris, did anything come over in chat?
Actually, surprisingly, no, people are not chatting today. So folks, this is your golden opportunity. If you have a question for David, we'd love to get those questions now. And just go ahead and type them into the chat feature in your Zoom, and we'll put those up and we'll have David answer those online. So if you have any questions, now would be the time.
So Chris, do you have any questions?
You know, I appreciate you mentioning we have a who's going to win March Madness. We just sent out our questions. Please answer that question. It is that time of year, so Allison's giving me a bad time that people aren't really interested, but I know you all are. No, I actually I appreciate you mentioning, oh, what is the pricing for Lightspeed? There's our first question.
So Lightspeed, they have a small, a medium, and a large plan. The small is for one register, and that's $99 a month. Then there's a medium plan is 2 registers. So it's similar to a lot of the iPad-based ones where they price it by sales register. You can go into the back end and run reports and do POs and receiving and all that stuff. It's not unlimited, but it's virtually unlimited as far as the number of users in the back end. But from a sales terminal, it's $99 for one. It is $169, I think it is, for 2. And then it's I could be wrong. This is about plus or minus 10%. And then I think it's $269 for 4. And then you can add onesies and twosies as you go along.
And we have some other questions that are flying across now. So the next question was, how do you see the items from Lightspeed that are mapped to the items in QB, or QuickBooks, of course?
So you do that by if I go back over here, and maybe I'll select this one, has a few more departments. So the items are, in fact, if I go back, let me go back to the Lightspeed. So in Lightspeed, here's our inventory. If I just select one inventory item, you assign a category to an inventory item. And you can have multi-level categories. It's not just a one-level category. You can nest them. But you assign a category, and then in the Shogo side, you assign the category to a QuickBooks item.
Okay. Okay. So we have the next one is a 2-part question. It's actually dovetailed on one of your answers you already provided. So they ask, is this basically geared to retail like ShopKeep to use Lightspeed?
It is definitely retail.
Okay.
Lightspeed has a restaurant app, but it's a completely separate app.
Okay. And then they're also asking the prices you quoted, and I'm assuming they're per month pricing, so the 99 or the 169 roughly is a per month.
Yes, it is per month. And then, I probably shouldn't say this, but then what they typically do is if you do 1 year, it's, they might do a little bit of a break. If you do 2 years or 3 years, they do more breaks. And so most of our clients end up doing 1, 2, or 3 years.
Okay. And then the last question they asked is, is a register equivalent to one company? So I'm assuming they mean if they have a retail location where they have multiple registers, do they need multiple licenses of Lightspeed, or how do they select the number of Lightspeed licenses they need?
So it's typically it's the sales register. So if you had 2 locations, like for example, one of our clients has 2 to 3 registers per location. And so in each location, you would have to have a 2 or 3 user or 2 or 3 terminal subscription.
Okay.
And you can mix and match. So I have one client that has 1 terminal in one location, 2 terminals in another location, so they have a small plan
Okay.
for one and a medium plan for the other.
Okay. And then a couple other questions. Can you upload CAM data into QB Pro 2015? And then the other is, can you upload Revention to QB Pro 2016?
I'm not sure what that means.
I don't know either.
So CAM, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Well, most of I can chime in. So
Okay.
most of the systems, if you can get out data into a CSV and
Okay.
upload it into any and I assume this is the same with Lightspeed, you can upload it, the list data at least. I don't know of anywhere you can actually convert transactional data, but you can usually, if you can get the list data out into a CSV or an Excel, then almost any of the programs allow you to import.
Yeah, so Lightspeed has import capability for customers and vendors and items, matrixed items, all those sorts of things. And you can export to CSV as well. There's a third-party company that if you wanted to get transaction history, they'll do it, but there's a cost.
Okay. So that she actually just answered back that CAM data is a different POS system. So I'm assuming that answer is probably universal. Every system will have some sort of.
Yeah, I've converted CAM into QuickBooks Desktop. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was your answer to that question. And I think that's actually all the questions we have at the moment. And you asked if I had a question, just to kind of reiterate, and again, one of the benefits of using a product like ours is that for the folks that want to stay on their desktop and integrate with any sort of POS system, as long as someone locally there is able to open the QuickBooks file, lock it, and then import the POS data, then QBox, of course, can share that data with any other remote computer. So that's kind of how potentially, and we have a large number of POS users that use QBox for that specific reason, solely because, again, we have our own integration, our own syncing capability. We're not using the web connector or the sync manager, which is now gone. So that is one conceivable way to use QBox with any POS system as well. Okay, so any other last questions, last chance before we transition here? Okay, again, I do want to reiterate now, I want to reach out to the audience right now and tell them that if I don't get at least some number of people that respond to my March Madness question, Allison's over here laughing at me right now. So I know you folks like college basketball. Don't be afraid. Just tell me, is it Kentucky? Is it Villanova? Is it UCLA? Let me know. If it's your local team, that's okay, but let us know who you're favoring, and we'll make sure we include that poll later in our webinar, because I know you guys watch it. I know you do. It's okay. I know it's tax season, but and also, just to reiterate, somewhere about the 150, 155 mark, we're going to be announcing our raffle winner, which is going to receive a $100 prepaid Visa card. So make sure you hang around, because Allison, the one who doesn't believe we're going to get responses to March Madness, is going to pick someone from our current participants today. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and transition again. We're going to hand the floor over to Will English. Thank you very much again, David, for that valuable information, for giving us a quick education regarding Lightspeed. I'm also going to mention now, and I'll mention later as well, both of these gentlemen are POS experts, so apart from today, they don't go home and go golfing or watch March Madness. That's their business. They're POS experts. So you can reach out to either one of Will or David if you'd like some assistance with either of the systems they referenced today, or any other system, as Will already talked about. So that's definitely a resource that you want to keep in mind if you do have a retail application where you're using a POS system, you have questions at any point in time, that's their business as consultants, so you can reach out to them. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and transition to Will English, who is again the president of English Management Solutions, and he's going to introduce us to integration with Revel and QuickBooks Desktop. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to you, and Will, you can go ahead and take it from there.
Thank you, Chris. And as we talked about, I'm actually going to shut down my camera just because it's easier for me to kind of figure out what's going on. We have a gazillion different monitors in my office, and it's hard for me to keep track. So, but everyone can still hear me okay, right?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
All right. So, although, oh, there we go. Hopefully you can see, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the Revel application. This is the iPad. Oh, sorry about my dog. Anyways, we'll move on. So we're going to show briefly what a sale looks like. We're going to show the back end, and then we're going to jump into configuring it, and then show what happens a lot in QuickBooks, just like David did. So basically, the Revel is a iPad-based application. It is designed. I swear, the dog did not bark all morning. Anyways, you must know this is on video. So, all right. So it's an iPad-based application. It is designed primarily for hospitality, but they do retail as well. And I'm using the retail demo. So basically, to be able to make a sale, I just hit whatever the various categories are, and I go ahead and hit it, whatever it is that I'm selling. Then I'll just go ahead and tender a sale. In this case, I'm going to do it as cash, and done. So the important part of that is that it's a...
I'm not sure we can see your screen, Will.
Yeah, Will, I don't think your screen's not coming up for some reason.
About that one. See, I told you. Can you guys see that, my screen on the other?
Let's see. Something's happening, but I don't quite see it yet.
Hang on. Let me go. I bet that I was on the main screen. So can you... Well, I guess I am going to have to go off my laptop. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's try this again. Like I said, I have a gazillion monitors, and I need to get it onto the right one. It went over to the other one. Well, we'll spend the whole 25 minutes with me watching me struggle with technology. It'll be fun. Is there a way that you can, Chris, just give me control so that I can try whichever monitor that I need?
Let's see here.
Hang on. Share screen. Let's try this.
Okay.
There we go. There we go. So hopefully, do you see the iPad now?
That's it. We can
Perfect.
see on QuickBooks Point of Sale.
Technology. Yes. Speaking of which, so recently they announced that they're no longer co-branding the QuickBooks product. So it is now simply the Revel product. So let me go through a sale briefly again, or not. You know what? We're skipping that. All right. Let's go here. Let's go there. Hang on. All right. Let me go. Let's just show what the... All right. So this is a Revel dashboard, and basically what happens is that you have information that you can get from the iPad. So I have the ability to go look at reports. And so, for example, in my overview, it gives me, and I did some sales yesterday, so you can see sales yesterday. You can see the sales today. I can also set up some custom. Under my reporting, I do have the ability to look at, and this is all syncing with the iPad real time. The Revel system does have the capability of doing offline ticket processing. What that means is if for whatever reason lose internet connectivity, You can actually take sales, you can swipe credit cards, you can do all of that. When you come back online, then it will try to process those credit cards, and then it will tell you which of those declined. So we also have the ability to set up inventory, and each of those inventory products can have categories and subcategories, which are how they get driven onto the menu on the iPad itself. So if I look at my men's tops and t-shirts, then I have all of the various flavors of the types of t-shirts I have. I did want to point out one thing here, is that Revel uses a class for a reporting mechanism and not so much for classes like you would consider in QuickBooks. So when I see product class and it says men's tops, that's something that's a reporting mechanism in Revel. But we can also go into QuickBooks and we can tell it that we want to report by class as well. And so basically, when I set that up, when I show you the configuration of that, that's an important thing to know. So under the inventory, I have the ability to create purchase orders, receiving or return vouchers. I can set reorder points. All of these things get transmitted back to QuickBooks using the utility that we're going to talk about. And then to do that, we simply click on the settings. So there's no third-party application here. In fact, when the Revel product was partnered with QuickBooks originally, it only talked to the QuickBooks Online, and we're like, no, 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 no. We're not going to sell this unless you have it talk to the QuickBooks Desktop product. And Intuit heard us. It took a while, but they heard us. And so then they decided to create the integration to desktop. So I simply click on the QuickBooks button. This is from within the Revel console. And then I have the ability to integrate with either desktop or online. So if I click on the QuickBooks desktop integration, basically what happens is there's an application that gets downloaded. And then that application has a code that you need to put into the system for it then to know that this is where it goes ahead and finds the information. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring up my sync. Any questions while I'm doing that?
I don't see any questions that have come across in the last moment or so. Does anybody have any questions regarding Revel for Will English?
So once I've downloaded the app and then installed it, basically, and entered this configuration code, then it goes ahead and gives me this window here. And then I go under the gear icon, and this is where I go in and I do the configuration. Synchronization type, remember we talked about the class in the back end, and that's a categorization of product. So I can do summary, kind of like what David was talking about. I simply summarize, or I can summary by product class, or I can summarize by product itself. Do I want my data to sync to QuickBooks? I don't know why you would want to say no, but anyways, it's there. Payment reconciliation. So the idea is that if you're using the Intuit payments method, then you can actually go and you can turn that on, and it will reconcile where it will match up and match those batches. House accounts. So Revel does have limited capability to do accounts receivable, and so then you would turn that on. They are promising that they're going to get better at this, but currently what happens right now is that if you do a house account transaction inside of Revel, and what I mean by that is that you're not tendering payment at the time that you're taking the sale, then it considers that a house account. And house accounts are all managed within inside the Revel product, and then it posts a summary entry to keep your AR straight. However, any detail that you'd want to see about the customer would all be within Revel. My understanding is, and we've asked them to change that to make it so that the AR comes across by customer so that I can run the report either both out of Revel or also out of QuickBooks itself. Do I want to track my inventory and purchase order data? Yes or no? Again, if I'm using Revel in a restaurant situation, most likely I'm not going to do that. Paid ins and paid out data in QuickBooks, yes or no? And then also they do support payroll. So if I'm tracking hours inside the Revel system, for example, it does have the ability to set up schedules for employees and be able to have that all transfer over and set up payroll. If I'm doing that, then basically that will be transmitted across to QuickBooks as well as payroll entries and fill out the timesheet. Down below here, then under my accounts, this would be where I would go in and I would define which accounts, GL accounts, that I wanted things to hit in Revel. Unlike what David showed us, I really don't have the ability to select or change a lot of these configurations, except just change the GL count in total. So, but the list is quite extensive, and then I just tell it where I want things to go. So our next selection is common settings. So the idea here is these are configuration items that are, for whatever reason, it's being slow. These are configuration items that are common to the. We'll just cancel out of that. The payment methods, same sort of thing. So I have all the various types, and I can map those to the payment methods that I have in QuickBooks. And then likewise, sales summary. This would be where I would go in and configure the sales summary. Well, anyways, I know that we have a limited amount of time, so we'll continue on. In the next sync all products, all product classes, all vendors, and you can choose to go ahead and do that. By default, the product, it syncs every hour, but you can in fact push data. So if for whatever reason you had, let's say you were starting a new QuickBooks file and you needed to re-push data, if you click on here, then I do have the ability to go ahead and send old data into perhaps a new QuickBooks file. There's actually a function inside the desktop that does something similar to that. So that's it for all of that. You can see that it updates, and this has already been updated. Are there any questions before we actually move into the QuickBooks?
Yeah, there's actually several questions.
Sure.
I'm going to start at the top here. So the first one was, and I think I heard you mention this at the outset, but does Revel integrate with Xero in addition to QBO and QBDT?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay.
We had the partnership. I mean, they're still, so we should be clear about that. Intuit and Revel are still very strong partners. They've just decided to discontinue the QuickBooks point of sale powered by Revel product. However, so those of us that went through the certification, and you do need to, they only allow you to purchase from people that have gone through the certification training, then basically you're purchasing the Revel product, all of the branding. In fact, I'm a little surprised that QuickBooks point of sale powered by Revel is up here. Perhaps I log out and log back in, or at some point they're going to change that. Same
Okay.
on the iPad side as well. If you download from the iPad, you will not find QuickBooks powered by Revel. All that is a very long answer to they have a strong partnership, and I don't believe that they're planning on connecting to Xero. They might.
Okay. And actually that kind of segues into another question. Have you experienced or expect issues since QB and Revel separated? So I think I heard you say the answer is no, that it's more of a semantics business separation, but they'll continue to be the integration they experience now.
Right. So QuickBooks Payments is an option for Revel, and it's a very strong option. And so Revel has a vested interest in keeping the QuickBooks connection. Also, on the QuickBooks side, they have a vested interest in going after this marketplace. I think the decision was made, basically what we were told, and I believe it, is that Revel is wanting to go mid-market and up-market. For example, they have recently closed on Cinnabon and also Shell. So basically eventually every Cinnabon that you walk in and every Shell station that you walk in, the convenience stores, will be running the Revel product. And so QuickBooks felt as though while they were seeking that, that marketplace, that SMB, which is where Intuit plays, was kind of not really short-shifted, but I think that they just were going two different directions, and Intuit decided that they didn't want necessarily their brand associated with something that was more enterprise.
Okay. And actually, and then the one last question was, does the QuickBooks file need to be open at integration, or can it be uploaded the next day when the bookkeeper's in?
Well, this gets back into your Q box, right? So the idea is that this integration is taking place every hour. And so basically what happens is that if the file's open, it's doing the synchronization process. And then as soon as I close the file, so I have it open in Q box, I'm sorry, I have the program open. And let me switch screens. I told you I have too many screens. So anyways, so basically what happens is, so I've got a file Rebel sync here where I go in and so once this file's open and it's in QBox, obviously it's locked. So the synchronization happens, and then I close it down at the end of the day, and then the bookkeeper could open it up. Or if this was closed down, basically the synchronizations, or if I have, for example, if I have another QuickBooks file open, which is quite common for us accountant types, it won't synchronize because it needs to, you know, be able to see that. And then as soon as I close it down, then the bookkeeper can open it up and we're all good.
Okay, perfect. And actually, one last question before you jump into the next step. Is the link with QBDT a one-time link that's perpetual, or do you have to link each time?
No. Once you've configured the setting, hang on, let me get the right one here. All right, so where'd it go? That's the QuickBooks file. Hang on. Let me launch it again. It's an app that sits on your desktop. So it doesn't, once you've made that connection, you can see that I've connected to my retail demo, and this is the company file that I've connected to. And so basically the last updated, and the fact is the status is that the file has been updated.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's a question or not. There's now, once you've made the connection, and notice, remember when we were on the back end on Rebel, that there's actually a code that you have to input to be able to do this. So it doesn't, once you've given it that code, once you've made that connection, then you're good to go. And once it has that, sees that, then it'll just fire off that connector, and so once and you can see the configuration changed every time, but once the configuration is done, then you're done. You don't need to do anything else.
Okay, perfect. I think that answers the question.
Okay.
All right. I think that's our questions for the moment. If you want to jump into the next part here.
So this is our QuickBooks desktop file. Like Lightspeed, it creates a POS default customer. Now the difference here is that it uses invoices rather than sales receipts. And the reason for that is kind of back to the legacy when it started with integrating with QBO. QBO doesn't support multiple payments on a sales receipt, so I think that they just kept the same default. But what it does do is it goes ahead and so on the invoice, it lists out the items similar to what David was showing us, although in this case it does actually show the quantities of each of those that I sold. And so, but it also, the payment, it comes across and it links. So not only do I get the invoice, but I also have the payment that's associated to that. So it links those up. Let's see. There we go. So on the vendor side of things then, so I'll go into my vendor center. And I'd received some product from Mary's Fashion, so I go down there. And these are the bills that are getting created. So in Rebel, if you go to receive a product, you have a number of different fields. Notice that I have shipping and miscellaneous purchases, and I have all of those costs that are associated with it. And then if I go back to this bill here, So now what the Rebel product does is it just hits the inventory asset. These are the things that I received. These are the costs that I received them at. And basically, so it's just increasing the value of the asset. And then it also does the entry for the cost of goods as a journal entry. So that's what it looks like when I've received a product in through Rebel using the purchase order and the receiving process. Once it's received, if we go back to Rebel, there's a finalization process that we have to do, where basically after it's finalized, if I go into my inventory, and if I look at my purchase orders, so there's a process where we can receive it, we can fully invoice. You see how this one's finalized, but it's uninvoiced. So it has to be finalized and fully invoiced for it to be sent over. So you see new and uninvoiced. So this one wouldn't show up in QuickBooks at all. Go back to my file. Are there any questions about how that process works?
The only new question we have is actually related to using other merchant services. Can they be integrated with Rebel and/or Lightspeed? So I guess I'm assuming they mean some sort of payment system.
Yes, I won't speak for Lightspeed, but Rebel supports, I believe, six different processing. Now, if you're not using the Intuit, then you wouldn't get the integration that they offer through the sync tool. But what it ends up happening basically is if you go in to make deposits, you're still going to see the money that you would have. You know, that would all show up. Payments are on another screen. Hang on. Too many screens here. Well, anyways, everyone knows what the payment screen looks like. It would pop up and it would show up there. And speaking of which, so the issue of cash deposit. Well, hang on. Now I'm stuck. Now I need to go find the screen. Chris, why did you do this to me?
Sorry. I didn't know it was a loaded question at the time.
This is the first time that I presented on Zoom, so that's my only. Hang on. Let me find which. The hard part is I see all of your guys' mugs. Oh, there it is. All right. So let me drag that over there. So you can see this is a payment default customer, and you would deposit the same way. So you would get this same sort of thing if you had a non-integrated, because I didn't integrate. You know, I don't have payments integrated with mine. So you would just see it just like this, and then you would have to match up the batch. It's not, you know, it's not bad or good or indifferent. And there are a lot of reasons why you might want to choose a different payment processor than Intuit, but I'll leave that for another day. So I did want to show one other thing. So on the chart of accounts, all of the dollar amounts are being posted into our cash and drawer or undeposited funds, depending on whether or not it's a cash payment. And, all right, cash and drawer. And so this would be all of the cash payments are being deposited in here. And then what I would do is I would transfer those across into QuickBooks as I matched up so okay. That's it. In a nutshell, I know we had some technical difficulties and we're at 1:55, so I will turn it back over to Chris.
Okay, and actually before you leave, we have a couple last questions. The one is, where is inventory set up, in Rebel or in QuickBooks or both?
So inventory is set up in Rebel, and then basically what happens is it goes ahead, and if you go look back at that bill that we did, so it's just hitting the inventory asset. So if I look at this, it's just changed. By the way, this is very similar to what happens with QuickBooks Desktop point of sale, is that although QuickBooks Desktop creates an item, basically that item's only job is to increase the inventory asset value. So that's all that's happening here. So that you would set up the items inside of Rebel. When you received them in, its only job here is to increase the value of inventory, and then also it knows what the cost of those items are, and it creates the journal entry to take it out.
Okay, thank you for that. And the last one actually is a very long topic that I think any one of us could tackle, but the question is, how does QuickBooks Online different from QuickBooks Desktop? And I'm going to assume that question is in respect to how it integrates differently or the same with point of sale, I'm sorry. So I don't know if you have any popcorn thoughts, Will or David, about desktop integration as opposed to QBO integration with either product.
David, you want to start?
I can tell you from the Lightspeed perspective, the mapping is exactly the same. So you have that same exact screens where you set up the mapping, and the resulting entries in QBO are almost identical to the ones that are in desktop.
Okay.
And that's somewhat true. There's more. It basically works the same way in that you have the QBO integration is very similar. I'm trying to think. Again, the only difference, actually it's the same, is that it creates invoices in both. So because QBO does not support multiple payments on a sales receipt, they go through the mechanism of creating an invoice and then sending the payment that attaches to that invoice. Other than that, it's virtually seamless between the two.
Okay. Thank you very much for that answer. I think that's the last of our questions. And I do want to thank, again, very much David Glantz, who again was here representing Business Sense, and for his introduction to Lightspeed. Obviously, you both could probably take a much longer period of time introducing both of their respective products, but we do appreciate your time today and the introduction. Will, also thank you for introducing Revel to us. Again, folks, both of these gentlemen are experts at what they do, so obviously there's probably going to be other questions generated outside of what we've discussed today, and both of these gentlemen are available as consultants for point of sale questions or help that you may need, maybe integrating or implementing a point of sale system for one of your retail locations. So their information is available again on our website, and they'll also be available in the form of a link after today. So thank you very much, Will. Thank you very much, David. We greatly appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Just so you folks know, next month, we have already scheduled our next desktop time for April 19th. We're very excited to have QB Bob and Karen Seward joining us, and they're going to be talking about downloading bank transactions into a QuickBooks file. So we'll obviously be promoting and announcing that as well. I do also see our random winner for today. We're supposed to have a drum roll, but my drum doesn't work here. So is Sylvie Moriarty. So Sylvie, we'll send you an email offline to get your information where we can mail you that prize that you won today. Thank you very much to everyone that was able to join us today. Thank you again to Will and David for taking your time. Thank you to Allison, who's hiding out over here and didn't believe people knew what March Madness was. I don't think I hit my 20, but I think I got maybe 5 or 6. So thank you very much. I don't think we had a common winner. So I think we had an Arizona, we had a Kentucky, we had an Arkansas. So we had kind of a mixed bag. So anyway, so we'll just call it a toss-up for now. We didn't have a general consensus. I was actually going to use you guys to fill out my bracket. So if I heard here today there was a consensus, I was going to use that for my ESPN bracket. But since we didn't get it, that's okay. I'll have to just figure it out on my own like usual. And I'll probably pick wrong anyway, so don't choose what I do. So anyways, oh, there's a Kansas Jayhawks coming across. I'm surprised it took so long for Kansas to come through. So anyway, the winner of March Madness is QBots. All right, thank you. I love that one. We're not in it, though. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I'd be warming up and shooting layups. So anyways, thank you so much, everybody. Again, hey, there's the second Gonzaga. That may be a sign. So go Gonzaga, out here on the West Coast. So thank you very much again for your participation. We thank you. I know you're all very busy with the deadline today and being in the midst of tax season, but we appreciate you joining us. And hopefully, again, you heard something today you didn't know already. And we'll look forward to seeing you next month on April 19th. Thank you very much again. Take care. Bye-bye.